Here on Kiwi, time for the voice of the creative economy. It's Vincent Heeringa at Idealogue magazine, idealogue.co.nz. Good morning, Vincent.
Good morning, Wammo.
And kicking off today with a chat about a bit of a shake-up in the telco industry, some shenanigans between Telstra and Telecom. What's going on?
Well, there's a bit of a change happening at the big end of town. We'll talk about the big end of town and the little end of town today. And starting with the big end, some talk about a potential merger or an acquisition of Telstra Clear by Vodafone. And this has been rumoured for some time, or at least there's been speculation in telco circles about the three major players, Telstra Clear, Vodafone and Telecom, are uncomfortable competitors at the top of the tree. They fight over market share. Telstra Clear in particular is large but doesn't make much money. Vodafone is large but doesn't have a fixed line network. Telecom, obviously the long-term dominant player, but recently split and is now a potential takeover target in itself as just effectively a marketing services company, so it doesn't own the lines anymore.
Right.
And so the change that was begun in 2006 with separating Telecom into a lines company and into a services company has really opened the door to potential shake-up between those three. And as I say, much speculated, much talked about, but now potentially looks like it might be happening.
Well, so what would it mean, I guess, for the consumer at the end of the day?
Well, it's hard to know, Wammo. Let's just talk about what actually is on the cards and then perhaps have a think about what that might mean for you and me as consumers or as investors. So what's been looked at the moment is that Vodafone, the UK, Vodafone's a listed company in the UK, large multinational, is in takeover talks with Telstra Clear, we believe anyway. Telstra in Australia, which is the majority owner, has announced to the stock market that it's in talks with Vodafone to sell to the UK company, and that would mean that you would have it's actually a very happy marriage of a company that has Vodafone, largely a mobile network, very strong in residential, and Telstra Clear, which is largely a fixed line and mostly a business-focused network.
Yeah.
It has quite a strong residential footprint, but very strong in fixed line and very strong in business. Has most of the universities, banks, large government departments are served by Telstra Clear. So you bring those together and you actually have quite a compelling company that's strong in residential mobile and then strong in fixed line and in business. Now, the reason that might, and so you look on it on paper and that's kind of interesting, and Telstra in Australia you would think would be interested in that because they say that they want to divest of New Zealand and head north to Asia. But actually, yesterday things took a wee twist as an Australian consultancy called Ovum, which is a telco specialist research agency, revealed that what they think the real strategy is, and that is that they think that Telstra is gunning for Telecom. So Telstra Australia would divest itself of Telstra Clear New Zealand.
Yeah.
That would free it up to then make a bid to buy Telecom. Because at the moment they can't have both. They can't have both Telstra Clear and Telecom. That wouldn't pass the Commerce Commission rules about competition. And so potentially what we're looking at is kind of all change, really, that Vodafone would end up buying Telstra Clear, Telstra would be rid of Telstra Clear and may end up buying Telecom.
Fascinating sort of shuffle of the deck chairs, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, what that might mean is for us as ordinary folk would be that you're down then to a duopoly rather than three major players in the market. You're down to two.
Yeah.
And duopolies can work, but they have their problems. And between the two of them, they can control the market. And particularly, when you think about it from a technology point of view, Telstra and Telecom, does Telstra Australia and Telecom New Zealand operate the same XT network and the same kind of basic infrastructure. That means that Telstra could actually run Telecom effectively from Sydney. So you're looking at potentially huge job losses for engineers and operators, and call centres and so on, as Telecom becomes a satellite of Telstra. This is all speculation, Wammo, it must be said. It's all the fevered imaginations of researchers and telco analysts. But
in saying there's a duopoly, I mean, you've got other players in there like 2 Degrees in the mobile space, Orcon in the broadband/mobile space and phone space as well. So there are other players there. Yep,
that's very true. But it's a little bit like where Beer used to be, with Lion and DB being the main players, and then a long way down the market share path were the boutique operators, and it's kind of a similar situation. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. When you have 2 big competitors, they have scale, they have the ability to spend money and get return on investment. So that actually could be quite good. And you also have potentially sort of rival broadcasting networks, because through the fibre optic network that Telstra has, you could potentially run a cable TV station through Vodafone's for Vodafone. So very interesting times ahead. But certainly if the Telecom, if Telstra purchased Telecom, we would really see the gutting of that company, and it wouldn't be the large monolith of days gone by, which perhaps is a good thing, Wammo.
Indeed, fascinating. All right, and finally, there's been a departure at Charlie's.
Yes, Stefan Lepionka, who was the founder of Charlie's Juice Company, sold that company about a year ago. You may remember we talked about this. He sold it to the Japanese multinational Asahi, as in the beer company. They also do beverages, non-alcoholic beverages. They now own Charlie's 100%, and Stefan is stepping down as chief executive of that company. That's a good example, Wammo, of kind of the mixed blessing of foreign ownership. So he built up that company as an Australasian entity, sold it for, I think it was about 129 million. I can't remember exactly. It's in that order of sale.
Yeah.
Has banked the money. So on the one hand, terrible shame to see a great New Zealand emerging brand go to foreign ownership. But on the other hand, the dude is now loaded, and he's announced that he's stepping down as chief executive, but is staying in New Zealand, wants to fund and mentor and help new businesses take that step from being just a domestic one to being an Australasian or even a global company. So the positive is that someone like Stefan Lepionka is there as a wise and experienced mentor for other entrepreneurs with money and advice.
And did he have any initial advice to dish out? Did he say anything when he left?
Well, he commented on national radio this morning just about how difficult it is to operate in Australia. And the interesting thing about Australia is that it's not as deregulated as New Zealand. So he said even if consumers in Australia want your products, because they're like consumers everywhere, they're interested, hungry, curious, they want variety and change. It's the middlemen and the established players in distribution, in marketing, in shopping, in freight and transport, all those levels of incumbent and bureaucratic kind of establishment that's very, very hard to break in Australia. Hugely unionised, hugely regulated. I mean, it is amazing that Australia is as successful as it is when it is probably... It's almost, sometimes you go there and you feel like it's like a blooming socialist state. I don't know if you ever tried to catch a taxi at changeover time, but there's a moment in time where there are no taxis in Sydney.
Yeah, indeed. Interesting. Hey, thanks very much, Vincent.
Thanks, Wammo.
Dialogue.co.nz for more analysis.